So a little disclaimer before we move forward. All the thoughts that I might share may not reflect the NSAC precept. And this is in truth, because spiritualism, if it is not evolving us, it's not meant to do that. It's not meant to stay the same. So when we evolve, the ideology, the ideation, the understanding changes. So just had to bring that, not for any other purposes, but to just say, there are some thoughts that might be from my own journey. So a few months ago, I said I'm not going to get more books. A few of them from the library section. So, you know how life goes, we make promises to ourselves and then we find out like, oh, what are we doing again? So I was just enjoying that part there. But what also was enjoyable was the hymn that we just sang. My very first introduction to this hymn was at the Church of Spiritual Awakening. Our friends were there at the time, and that song, I feel, was always there, every service. And then I enjoyed my connection with St. Francis and the animals and the caring that it offers. So there's a different bonding at that level for me. I do love the hymn. It's sort of sometimes it runs in my own mind from that part. So that being said, philosophy in spiritualism is an integral part. It's one of the three pillars that is very strongly spiritualism stands on. And the other two is an aspect of religion. And the third pillar is of science. Science being where we can prove the continuity of life, phenomena, things flying off the walls and shelves, and we are getting the nudges to go left and right, pick that thing up, and so forth. So we all have had those moments where we have received guidance. And I feel my guidance usually comes when I'm least paying attention. Something just shows up to refresh my eyes, my views, my breath, my energy, and it just takes me to the next place. And that is also one of the most frequent questions if anybody is in a learning, educational field of teaching, sharing, how do we work with that? And my part has become to keep it very simple. If they are telling you to go left and right, see how you feel about it and just go and have an experience. I found so many wonderful things just because of that. That sense of exploration has been a big part. So we're sitting almost to the half of 2026. What have you explored in this first 6 months? That's a little simple ideation there. What is thriving within each and every one of us? How are you blending with your life's philosophy where it's evolving? That part of that awareness is there. But what are we also setting up the tone to the next 6, 7 months that are still remainder in this year? I'm very happy to just have the next day some days. And that's the realism in me. I wake up and that's the day I get to be. Whatever is on that day, it goes on. Then I'm also realizing I cannot just look at just one day. I have to prepare for something more than that. So 3 days, 3 weeks. But the ideation is that philosophy always runs internally, and it has kept me moving at all times. I have lots of books, but I'm very simply saying I'm not such a well-read person, but the books talk to me and they provide me what I need to have. So a little regression, digressing into part of my last few weeks. I'm once again also not a very established artist, but I just received the inspiration and I worked with that. So my philosophy is running into watercolors and writing and papers. So I'm still not a writer because I'm just doing it for fun. It's enjoyable. So if you've heard Reverend Diane Davis from this podium, she has also talked in some of her philosophy, natural law teaching groups about the guilt and the shame. So I finished one of my art journals with a theme on aliens, so it's still sitting there for review. So I picked a brand new art journal and I'm like, what are we working with here? I just asked myself. And that was my premise, was guilt, shame, and the way out. So I worked on some drawings and I've received words and I checked those words for plagiarism. If I'm just fantasizing, these thoughts are just coming from somewhere or read them before. Most of them are quite original in its own presentation, so I always check for that. Is going on. So yesterday, evening I sat on my journal and I was looking at something, watercolor was there and it was not formed. And I looked at it, all I heard was, this series is done. So I'm like, well, here's the directive, and I can't go beyond that point. So I just took a fine line pen and I just started outlining that thing, and it turned out to be a flower. It was not the intention of that watercolor, but it turned out to be a flower. And as I'm looking at it, I had no words, nothing to go with it. I was just sitting still. It was a very still moment of my awareness. But Spirit has always given me this assurance for at least solid 6 years, 10 years, 11 years at this point, 11 years at this point, I will never be alone. And I always am so gloating in it most of the time. I'm surrounded. So the more I sat in my quietness, the more I just like, I'll just leave it alone. Went on by the day, came back in the evening, the light was so dim I couldn't even see what I did there. But the thought that was running inside of my mind was, no flower has blossomed from outside in. It has to blossom from inside out. And then I checked for plagiarism. So the response came, the thought has been expressed in many different forms, but the way it has been worded is original to my voice. So I didn't make it up, I just sat there and it just arrived. But then it became an investigative thought, and it stayed with me and it stayed with me. It is there. All the changes I feel, what we go through life, and all the mediums in our history that have gone through life, all the teachers and the philosophers that has gone through life, they have perhaps somewhere witnessed this change from within themselves. And everything on the outside was matching that feeling somewhere, through observation, through listening, company, groups, etc. So perhaps the idea is we collect together in a like-minded group. Our energy is drawn to where we need it the most. It suits where it is nurtured the most. And when it stops nurturing, you find your way out. And the way out doesn't mean you drop off there. You need something more, or you need something bigger, and it has to support that. So spiritualism and the philosophy continuously has a place of enjoyable friction for me, because it allows to investigate my own thought. I'm very confident that each and every one of you, within your own lives and your own memories, your own right, you go through that own friction of finding where you are in all this life's happening. And then you investigate from your own vantage point. I may not understand it word for word or situation for situation, but energetically I can understand that part. So the communication with the spirit side through the science aspect of spiritualism has been proven time after time, over and over again, and yet every time a medium is stepping in demonstration or sharing their abilities, they are going through that proving the point over and over again. So that ideation never grows old or never gets tired of it. That investigative skepticism from receiver continues. It makes it even more interesting when the medium itself is a skeptic in some way, shape, or form, just wondering what's going to come forward, what the evidence is going to be. And that part is also an evolving thing, is there. So in the bookstore here, for your enjoyment, Reverend Marilyn Autry's book, River of Life, is very much there. There are other authors that have written very eloquently about natural laws and spiritual laws. So explore other writers. That way you will see different thought planes of how somebody is processing. There are lots of books in the bookstore from Peggy Barnes that are good reading material. There are short reads. There are classic texts. And the classic text means it never gets old. It just finds a new definition. It just finds a new way. But why would that be? If we were not evolving, we would perhaps understand it the same way we understood it the first time. So the expanded thought perhaps comes from our own soul's journey, or on our own spirit's journey, to where it's finding its own expansion and its expression. So what is great in your life today? What is that you are trying to work with? What is that you are wanting to bring into your own lives? Are you happy exactly where you are? a state of bliss and states of grace and receiving, exactly where you need to be. What about that would you like to inspire to be different over the next 6-7 months? So when you reflect on 2026, you can say, starting, middle, and the end, what part of that journey is. So there's a lot of exploration and adventure to be had. I'm also enjoying my enjoyment with the song being rightfully placed, because on Friday, my lawn person was taking care of the lawn, and I was just enjoying how everything was thriving. Just like books, I have started receiving plants and flowers too. You can have this, would you like to have this? And my garden is growing. I didn't want to have a garden because then I have to tend to it, but the enjoyment is becoming great. I brought in a real rose plant and I planted it. It had 4 blooms. Yesterday it had 16 blooms. And everything is thriving. What I've enjoyed is I talk to them and I just say, hello, how are you doing? What do you need? I touch them, I let them poke and prod me. It's not by any other intention that this is helping them, it's just me enjoying the same receiving from it. I was talking to my cow, she had clip grouping there. I had to clip somebody off because they were struggling to survive, so I had to just give them a little pruning. But at the same time, all I heard is, don't throw me away, put it in a different pot, see what happens. So I took my stems, I put it in a different pot. But that is also a very wonderful reminiscing of my own mother. She was very much of a nature. She would bring clippings from somewhere. She found somebody's cutting pile, she would drag them home with her. Photos were not to be bought, purchased in our home. You go steal one or clip one somewhere. And stealing means just pick one out and not just like barging in somebody's home. But that was the ideation. It always thrives, and then we call it a money plant. And when you bring it that nature, it grows. I have like 12 plants inside the house. I have so many more on the outside. I'm like, what is happening? Am I turning too old too fast here? Because that's the leisurely activity of the aging and the numbers. But a part of that is I enjoy that. I'm enjoying my monstera plants on the inside, and I'm also wondering, because just that enjoyment is very excitable for me to see. I also have a snake plant that blossoms. I'm not sure if anybody has experienced that, and the smell is like a very sharp gardenia smell. It bloomed like 8 different times in the same pot. I'm like, well, here we go, something smelling nice. And I found a little stem of flowers. So that discovery, I never knew that snake plant blossomed a flower, let alone it had such a fragrant smell. And when that plant is blossoming, my whole house smells. It's not just that room. It is so pungent, it's so strong. So my excitement is such a beautiful place. So I believe last time I said my house, there's a concussion bomb in my house has been rearranged somewhere. It still is like that, it hasn't changed much. But I noticed that one corner in my room, plants is almost somebody hit a pause button and nothing was growing. And this is where it comes back to that part of the philosophy. So I observed it for 2.5 months. That plant did not budge, did not do anything. And I was sitting like, what's going on? So my logical side of the brain was like, what am I doing? Everything was fine. No wilting, no browning, no yellowing, nothing was there. It was not receiving the adequate amount of sunlight and warmth in that corner. So it suspended its growth. And once again, that philosophy, nature in me, is a simple observation. So I moved it back to the window. And it has 4 new leaves, it's just thriving, it's sprawling out, it's just going all over the place. My point is, if any one of us feel we are stalled in our phase of life, once again, perhaps the idea is, are we receiving the right ingredients to blossom and thrive in? That doesn't allow us to say our environment is not the best, but the aspect is how we can carve an environment from where we are to creating more for ourselves, regardless of what the age and the number is. That drive is, if we are not living, we are missing the point. And living means keep pursuing what speaks to you. So I moved my plants, and my story still continues with the philosophy of my nature is saying like, oh well, now it's balancing it out. Then I notice I have another monstera plants for almost 6 months, 4 months. No changes, the leaves are exactly the same, they're not splitting, they're not doing anything, they're just sitting, it's sitting itself. So I repotted it itself and I'm saying, let's see what goes on. So have you ever noticed those leaves have tiny drops because of their photosynthesis and their circulation capillary system? So I'm noticing this tiny, glistening, beautiful drops of water on the leaf nodes. I'm like, yeah, fantastic. Open the window, let the sun come in. My natural prism happening inside the house. But once again, we sometimes do not observe those little tiny things that are so beautifully orchestrated in our lives, and just to look for some big results and outcomes, just go over them like nobody's business. So the laws of nature, spiritual and physical, they don't change, but they do definitely allow us to see it from different vantage point, different perspective, creating our own sense of enjoyment. I also remember my first experience with a Herkimer diamond in my hand. I only heard that it's a very powerful stone, it's very high frequency. My heart raced like nobody's business. It was same as the first time I had a strong cup of cappuccino. Equivalent to that, it was just like racing, and I'm like, what's going on? And then I realized I was carrying that Herkimer diamond in my pocket. Made the impression, made that awareness, it's still the same. It stimulates my energy, so I have to very mindfully use it. It's a part of my journey, but at the same time I cannot have it for long durations. So I take the benefit from it, move on. And that's another part of the philosophy in any type of understanding. Take what's working out for you. If you start to dwell on things that are no longer serving a bigger purpose or a deeper meaning to you, perhaps leave them where they are. Receive what is good for you, what is serving your soul. And then you move on to the aspects of life to enjoy them, representing in more forms and more things in your own manifestation of it. My other sulking feeling that I'm sharing just for the understanding of the nature of vantage point, this year I have not decided to travel anywhere, so I'm staying local. There was definitely a little sadness there because I enjoyed my travel time. I enjoy like meeting people and seeing new different things, seeing what restaurants have changed or what menu is different on them. Because when you're in the same environment, you get to the same places. So there was a little bit of sadness there. And I don't think those on the invisible side, my people that don't leave me alone, and I'm happy with that, strummed up the whole complete different environment. And I have a printing lab in my home for my enjoyment. I was not planning on it. There was not even on my radar of things to do. But I feel like they wanted me to be extra busy so I don't even have time to think for anything. So my print lab is ready and hot and cooking and working. And a part of that is now it allows me to go on my whimsy of creating my little silliness and my joyful joyisms and then share it with the rest of the world. But part of that is they supplemented my sense of missing out on something with something more exciting, still more expressive from my side. But what about you? What opportunities do arrive to you inspirationally? And perhaps you don't take that one half a step in seeing and investigating what potential it might hold for you. Potential is a big key factor in stimulating the motivation, the encouragement, and the reinforcement. It's doable. It's doable. I've had my version of life just like most of you where I waited for things to get to me. And I've learned I have to take some steps towards things that I want in my life. Outside of it, they will remain a potential. And that's a beauty of the philosophy of spiritualism that sort of strengthened my whimsy in sitting there and looking at things, the why, what's going on. And I enjoy that because these laws are always there and I'm sitting back and getting a kick out of it and just enjoying that way of journey. The aspect of religion is because I feel a sense of joyfulness that spiritualism is a religion because we're in the National Registry of Religions. And that's about all the purpose it is. However, spiritualism, I feel, is a very philosophical fellowship where the spirit is always ready and open to be discussed and seen through perspective of different people from different experiences. Religion is just, it qualifies to be a religion. And I enjoy that because there's a sense of belonging in some hierarchical system of our way of life. So, the ideation here as I come towards the conclusion is, how do you find yourself in the month of June in 2026? Have you even taken time to do an inventory check? What's going on, or what you're wanting, where things are, and so on and so forth. I want you to be brave and courageous to do your inventory. And if you're in a part of receiving your list, you will find there are things of joy. Not everything is sad and gloomy and deprived. There are things that are thriving. And if your heart is thriving, you need to understand the vibrational game is the game. Wherever the mind goes, it draws more of those experiences. So when you're in a good feeling place, the laws of philosophy, the laws of spiritual nature says, if you know how to come to that place of higher excitement, higher adventure, it will meet you right where you are in that time. So my sadness in April was like, I wish it was different. That's all the thought was. So my travel plan was changing. And that different, I never thought this is how it's going to manifest. What about your life? Have you ever asked, I want things to be changing and different, and when they arrived, it threw you off your own game because you were not wanting that change? You wanted cookies, but then you ended up with a little jelly belly over there, and then things didn't make sense. So my idea was, this is how I manifested my version of spiritual success. When it's supposed to happen, when our intention meets the qualification of receiving, it moves effortlessly, it moves without hiccup, things get to you easy peasy. And if it's not meant to be, you stand upside on the head, you pull all the strings that you know in your best game. So, if you've ever flown a kite, visualize flying a kite. Sometimes you have to give it slack to take it a little further. And that's what happens. When things are not working out, give it a little bit slack, let it move a little differently, and then we'll find its own happy place with that. But my theory has become, if it's supposed to happen, it's going to fall in place. It will be so easy that I would not even think about it. Everything that I got set up for my work was so effortless, and that's all I knew. It was moving in the right direction, it's going to work itself out. And my offering to you is, if you're finding there's any stressors or tense places in your life, try to give a break, not to the situation, maybe give a break to yourself. Give yourself permission to be okay for a day or two or a week in saying, let me just have that little moment of slack. We'll come back to it. So my inspirational thought is a very popular quote, I perhaps may be paraphrasing this. The lesson is not done until it's done with you. So you can always come back to that lesson if it's not working itself out. But have that joy and excitement to say, you know, Spirit will never disappoint me, it will never abandon me, it's always watching out for my best. My cognitive side might think differently, but they're always operating at a higher rate of vibration than we can understand. And I hope my trust that speaks for my story represents your story in your own most humble, sweet, graceful way. So thank you for being a part of my day.